Hello, and welcome back to another Tango Banter. I am Yelizaveta, and I'm excited to spend the next few moments with you talking today on another aspect of tango marathons and festivals. Quick reminder that this week on Thursday, November 10th, I am participating in a discussion, somewhat of a free-form panel discussion interactive event on the topic of confronting fear to get the dances you want. If you'd like to join, it's a free event from 12 to 1:30 p.m. Pacific time. Check out the link that I've provided in the show notes. It'll be great to see you there and to interact with you live. And if you can't attend live, you can access the recording after the event, which is available for a small fee of about $5 or so. And I've also provided the link to that in the show notes as well. So we are continuing our discussion of tango marathons and festivals. And after my episode aired last week, I got quite a few messages from people who had never been to either festival or marathon, or encuentros for that matter. And I guess it surprises me still that there's so many people in tango who've never attended these big events. So today's episode is all about how to score some good tango at these big events. And hopefully those of you who have not been to a tango marathon or a festival yet, maybe you're on the fence, maybe you're at that point where you're somewhat considering it, but you're kind of nervous and kind of don't know. I hope today's episode provides you with some hands-on tools and tips that you can use to have that courage to attend a marathon and have a good time. So I really thought about how to succeed at a marathon from this perspective of how to get what you really want, right? We all go there for a particular reason. If you decide to go to a festival, it is in hopes that you're going to get to dance with some really good dancers, that you're going to achieve that satisfaction of having as much tango high as your heart and body desires. And it's tricky, of course, because tango is such a unpredictable animal. You never know quite what you're going to get. But I'm going to give you some tips and some ways that you can approach this expedition, this adventure, to give you the most opportunity and give you the best chances of getting what it is you want at these events, so that you feel that your money is well spent, let's just say, because yeah, these events are big financial and a big time commitment. So I'm going to open my suggestions with this one that is really important. And I am still having to remind myself this. And that is, no matter which event you go to, try not to have high expectations. Whatever your expectations are, 9 times out of 10, they're not going to be met. And I've noticed this for myself, that whenever I go with a lot of anticipation and it's like, oh my God, I'm going to this thing and there's going to be all these people. I'm going to dance with the most amazing dancers and maybe I'll score a dance with this person and that person. A lot of times I'm very disappointed. And I think it's good. It's good to have that practice of not being too attached. think this is one of the more spiritual lessons that tango has taught me, is that you really have to practice non-attachment as much as possible, being open to whatever happens and not judging your experience, not feeling like because certain things didn't happen, that means it was a waste of time. It's tricky because, of course, especially if it's your first time or maybe you're still new to these events, when you go, there's so much anticipation and there's the preparation and the excitement of it. So this first suggestion is something for you to take with you no matter what, no matter whether you go to a festival or to a new Malanga, is just try not to have too many expectations. And I think the reason that it doesn't work to have too many expectations is because once we have expectations, we kind of get this tunnel vision and we're primed to look for that thing that we have in our mind. And then we forget about everything else and we don't experience other things. So for me, this has expressed itself a lot in wanting to dance with certain people. And I've talked about this before, especially when I was just starting to get to the level where I was more able to dance with more advanced dancers, professional dancers, maybe visiting teachers. And so on a night of a festival, I'd go with this expectation that, oh, that person's going to be there and I want to dance with them. And I would just think about it and obsess over it. And it was sort of funny how it would turn out, because not only would I not dance with that person, but then I would miss out on all this other stuff that was happening. In contrast, sometimes I go and I actually have very low expectations, or I'm even sort of negative about it. I'm like, it's not going to be a great night. I'm just going to go and I don't care. It's whatever. I'm just going to be there. And I don't have any expectations at all. And I end up having a fantastic time. So that tends to be a pretty consistent experience. So if you can, or to the most degree that you can, try not to get into that tunnel vision and have extremely high expectations from the start, but treat it as you're just opening up to possibilities. You don't know what's going to happen. You are not clear. It might be great. It might not be so great. That is a possibility. But the important thing is that you're opening yourself up to possibilities of something new. And that's really the best place to be. That's the sweet spot where you're just kind of like, I'm willing to go on this journey, and it might be great. It might not be so great, but I don't have any attachment to it being either one. That's the goal. That's the mindset that is probably the most healthy. Now, as you are preparing for your festival and your marathon, and let's say you've identified which ones you want to go to, and you've paid your dues, you've paid your admission, the next thing that I would recommend is that you get in touch or connect with the other people who are going. And maybe that comes first. I think that's a great strategy for those of you who are not familiar with festivals or marathons. When you're trying to decide which ones to go to, talk to your friends that you already know in Tango community and ask them where they're going and try to kind of buddy up with them. And that makes it a lot less scary when you already go in with knowing someone. And Facebook is a great avenue for this. Facebook, I think, is the official social media platform for tango dancers. It's funny, when I was in Buenos Aires, I really felt that shift that gradually, as I was going there several times, gradually, more and more, I was hearing this question, are you on Facebook? And with every person I met. So every dancer that I danced with at Milonga, after the first song, after the second song, there would be that question, are you on Facebook? And then that's how, we'd connect. And there's tons of groups on Facebook, and there's a way that you can keep track of different events. And I think that deserves its own poster episode. I'm not going to go too much into it, into strategy of social media, but social media can definitely be a great tool for you to find the people that are good for you to know, and also events that would be good for you to go to. So connect with the people, coordinate with them. It can be just a couple of people that you know, it might be a group. And if you sort of tag yourself to their team, then when you go to the festival or marathon, you could sit with them at their table, and that already takes away a lot of that nervousness and anxiety about what it's going to be like. Now, once you're at the event, I would suggest that the first thing you want to focus on is not even the dancing, but it's the socializing aspect. And, not to say that you might not just start dancing right away, but if you haven't been before and you're feeling sort of uneasy, I would say look for opportunities to chat with people. And there are certain places in the room that you will see are better suited for that than others. So what you don't want to do is what I used to do when I first started going to festivals. Walk into the room, find the furthest corner from all the action, and go sit there and wait to be capaceoed. Like, that is the opposite of what you should be doing. Whether you're a follower or a leader, it's a really great strategy to just kind of move around. Even if you have a table, you put your stuff down, don't just sit there and wait, right? Walk around, there's usually like a drinking / snacking table, which a lot of people congregate at. Sometimes there's other pockets in the room where there's a lot of action, a lot of people moving around, and people are chatting. You'll kind of see every space has that sort of energy pools, I can call them. And I would suggest that you go and just hang out there, under the pretense that you're going to go get some more water or you're going to go get a snack. And again, it's not like you're aiming to achieve something specific. It's just that you're opening yourself up to the possibility of meeting somebody new. So a lot of times if you just go and you get a cup of water and you're just standing at the table and you just stay there for a little bit longer than you might want at first, because you might get the water and stand there for 10 seconds and be like, never mind, I'm going to go sit down. But just kind of push it. Don't be afraid of the tension, because a lot of times that's the thing that's very hard about events that you're not familiar with and people you don't know. There's this feeling of like, oh, nobody's talking to me. I must hide because I don't want other people to see that nobody's talking to me. At least that's how I felt. But as much as possible, stick with that tension and just hang out there for a little longer and practice, condition that muscle, that stamina of just being okay with not talking, not dancing, just being there by yourself. And I guarantee you something will happen. Somebody will talk to you. This is an experiment that I actually started practicing early on before tango, when I used to have a lot of social anxiety. I mean, I had literally panic attacks in social settings. And at the time, I was a gallery artist, so I was very involved in the gallery world in Dallas. And I would go to a lot of art openings and have to sort of interact with a lot of crowds in that context. And it was always really nerve-wracking to go and just feel kind of weird, especially when I'm like freshly graduated MFA and I'm hanging around posh people with lots of money, that definitely makes you feel sort of weird. And I decided that I was just going to confront this uncomfortable feeling head on. And instead of trying to hide, I would instead push myself to stand there by myself without my phone and just wait, just wait, not do anything. And it was surprising to me how short of a time would pass before somebody would talk to me. And so I think it's actually kind of built into us, and other people can feel that. There's sort of, there's like a vacuum that's formed around you, and that vacuum pulls people in. This strategy actually also worked in Buenos Aires when I went to an art opening. I was there for an artist residency for 6 months back in 2015. And as part of that residency, I was getting to know the community of artists in that neighborhood. And so I went to an art opening, and man, talking about fish out of water, because I did not know anybody very well. I just knew a couple of people, like the person who ran the residency and maybe some people from around that organization. And I spoke very little Spanish. I still do. I know Spanish. I can understand it. And I was forced to talk. I probably would talk pretty fluently, but I definitely didn't know it to the level of being comfortable speaking. And I remember most of the gathering was actually outside of the gallery because so many people smoke there and they don't smoke inside. So everybody was outside. And so there's like maybe 3 or 4 groups of people who know each other, and they're all talking, and it's all like great energy. It's all that familiarity that you feel in other people, and you don't have it, right? Like I'm standing there, I don't know anybody. And I thought to myself, okay, there it is. There's my opportunity. So I literally just stood there on the sidewalk. I didn't talk to anyone. I didn't look at my phone. I just stood there and looked around. And I think within about a minute, there was a whole group of people around me. And they were talking to me, and I was talking very broken Spanish. And then I ended up having a whole evening with that group. And I did go to dinner with them, and I remember that I ended up leaving early because I just wanted to go dance. I didn't want to sit around and eat. So that was in my early days when all I wanted to do was dance, and I felt like anything else was a waste of time. So it's a rite of passage. I think it's quite normal to feel that way when you first get into it. So my point is just try to talk to people or invite other people to talk to you, and you don't have to do anything except just make yourself available and don't hide. Make yourself visible. Yeah. That's, I think, a big one is the visibility aspect is a really important sort of sneaky point, because a lot of times, people will complain that they are not getting capaceoed. And then I ask them, well, where are you sitting? And a lot of times it's like way out of line of sight in some corner. And as I said, I used to do that. And so being visible is this other aspect, and it's very much of a mindset. So in addition to sort of being open to whatever, kind of has to go hand in hand with being visible. So being visible comes from walking around and going to the snack table. If there's a bar, hanging out at the bar, that's always a really great place to chat people up. But being visible can also mean that you stand when you capaceo and you allow yourself to experience that fear of maybe nobody's going to ask me to dance. And everybody else is going to see that. They're going to see that I'm not dancing. I tell you, it's a big fear, and it was a huge one for me. I remember when I first went to my first festival in Portland, Oregon. Tango was my first official festival in the US. At that time, I looked very different. I had very short black hair and I wore very stark makeup, and I always wore black. And I kind of wore like stuff that was kind of asymmetrical and artsy, but also sort of strange. So I kind of had a vibe that was, let's just say, it was a little intimidating. And I got that feedback from people over the years that a lot of times people were just very intimidated by me. And so here I was with my sort of, at the time, the haircut, I called it the girl with the dragon tattoo haircut. It was inspired by that movie, the first one, not the American version, but the earlier one. So I had these really severe short bangs, and my hair was like just maybe half an inch off my head, and I was very scared and sort of like anxious. And so, I would go out there and I would try to get a dance, and then I wouldn't get a dance, and then I would just try to hide very quickly, and I would go out and then I would hide. And at some point I thought, I just need to stay here. I just need to stay in this spot and be there. And so I was by the bar. I remember this very clearly. I was standing by the bar. Everybody else around me got a dance, and I didn't. And I just stood there for a while and allowed myself to be in that energy of like, there it is. There's me not dancing, everybody. Nobody asked me to dance. And it does not feel great, that's for sure. But it was kind of like, it's the worst thing that could happen, right? The worst thing that it could happen, in a way, is that you're not going to get the dance. You're not going to get asked. You're going to get rejected. And that fear is so profound that it dictates a lot of our behavior. It might even dictate whether you go to the event or not. I'm sure some of you are thinking, well, nobody's going to dance with me. I'm too old. I'm too tall. I'm too fat. I'm too short. I'm not good enough at this. I don't know enough. I'm too much beginner. Like, there's all these things that we say to ourselves that are the reasons why we might not take that step and go to something like this. But the real reason is that we don't want to experience the rejection. We're afraid that our biggest fear is going to come true, that we're not going to get asked to dance, or that we're going to get rejected. And there's so much profound wisdom and inner growth that's possible if you allow yourself to just experience that. Because honestly, it's not a big deal, really. In fact, this might put you at ease, is that nobody cares. Literally, nobody around you cares. Possibly nobody even notices it. Like, people don't keep track. Nobody's gonna, the next day, go like, oh, remember that person at the bar? They didn't get asked to dance. They must be a really terrible dancer. Like, nobody does that. And I think there is so much to be learned about yourself and your character and your inner workings of your mind when you allow yourself to experience something like this. Here I am talking about your fears. This is very appropriate. So if this is striking and resonating with you, you should definitely come to the talk on Thursday, because we'll dive in a little bit more into those experiences. Now, the other suggestion I have, I'm not suggesting anything that I haven't applied to myself. So I had to sort of pull myself up by my bootstraps to get into this thing called social tango and actually make it work. When I first started, it was terrible and it was uncomfortable. So the strategies I'm sharing with you are not because I ultimately think that this is the right way of doing it, but more, this is what helped me, and this is what I notice is effective in other people. So you can take whatever I say and try it out. And if it feels like it's not your cup of tea, no requirement to stick to that. So the next suggestion I give you is to smile. To smile. And I know for some of you it's like, ugh, but I can't smile if I don't mean it, and I don't want to be fake, and I don't want to have to pretend. And if I'm not having a good time, I just want to like be honest and whatever. And that I value that and I really respect that. However, it is also the case that smiling faces are just more welcoming. Just simple as that. Remember how I said that people used to think that I'm intimidating, right? People were very intimidated by me. And I had to sort of reflect on that and think about why. And there were many reasons that I don't need to go into right now. But one thing I started changing is my facial expressions. Because a lot of times people thought I was upset and they would ask me, "Are you okay?" Like if I was hanging out with my friends, and even outside of tango, this would happen. It's like people are like, "Are you okay? Is everything okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, this is my face." And maybe that, the expression, a resting bitch face, this was that I had that, right? And so what I started doing is being more aware of what my facial expressions are. And maybe I don't smile all the way, but I learned about this thing called smizing, which is smiling with your eyes. I learned this from a good friend of mine who's a photographer. And there was a night when we were hanging out, and he actually showed that there's a difference when you just have a straight face, no expression, versus when you're smizing. And smizing, I think, is a really wonderful skill to have. So even if you're not smiling because, maybe having a plastered smile on your face is painful, eventually your cheeks start hurting. And if I've experienced that when I can't stop smiling, and that's a good thing, right? But if there's nothing to smile about, you can think about smizing, which is smiling with your eyes. And I don't know an effective way of translating that into a verbal instruction if you're not looking at me when I'm describing this. But I would say it can be as simple as thinking about smiling and maybe observing in yourself, what is your face look what is your face like when it's completely relaxed? So completely no expression. All the muscles are just totally soft and allowing your face and your mouth to sort of relax down. And then imagine yourself just looking at something wonderful and you're about to smile. And what I experience is a slight pull up of the face, like the whole facial mask that's on top of my skull sort of becomes a little taut. And that sensation, to me, that's already smiling. It doesn't have to be actually smiling with your whole mouth, although that's great too. And a lot of times when I sit nowadays, I actually don't dance as much as I used to because, believe it or not, I'm happy to just sit and watch. And so a lot of times I'll sit and I'll just kind of have a little smirk on my face. In fact, I heard this, I don't know if it's a fact, but I heard this story about Barack Obama and how savvy he was at putting people at ease and having this wonderful social manner that he had. And the story goes that he said that whenever he's about to enter into a room, he thinks of a joke, and as he walks in, he like laughs or smiles at the joke. So as he's walking in, he's like laughing at the joke that he's thinking about. And I've actually tried that. Whenever I go to a Malanga, a lot of times I get all of my makeup on, I got my outfit, and I drive there, and I'm getting myself all prepared. And then I'll sort of pause and I'll have that focus, and I'll think, I'm going to walk in this way. I'm going to channel Barack Obama. And you just walk in with a smile on your face as if you're already in conversation, as if you're already sort of involved in some kind of a play with someone else, even if you're alone. And 100% of the time, it's amazing what that does for you. You walk in, automatically, people who see you first, the people who take your money at the door, they're going to smile at you. They're going to compliment you. A lot of times they'll say something nice, or they'll introduce you to someone, especially if you say it's your first time, which I do recommend. You tell people it's your first time. And a lot of times they'll kind of like bring you into their energy, and a lot of times that's all it takes, and suddenly you're being asked to sit at this table and introduced to this person, and that person asks you to dance, and it's done. You're in the flow, because that's kind of what you're trying to do, right? You don't have to jump through a bunch of hoops to get into that flow, but there's just these little things you have to do to kind of tip the scale in your favor. I think a lot about that scene in Finding Nemo, the cartoon about the fish. And at what point, there's this current, I don't remember what it's called, but this current in the ocean that all of the sea animals take. It's like a highway, right? And so in order to get on this ocean highway, you have to like enter it. You have to get in it, and then it goes. Sometimes I think of tango in that way, especially since I've mentioned in the last episode that a lot of times the energy of tango is described as an onda, a wave. So when you have a good time at a milonga, people say buena onda. And so you're sort of aiming to get into that flow, right? Into that energy of the dance. And so you're looking for ways that you can sort of pull yourself into that. And smiling or smizing is one of the really easy ways to make yourself, again, appear more open and more friendly. And it softens the experience quite a bit and makes it a bit more accessible. Now, the next thing I would suggest is that you take advantage of group activities that are outside of the milonga. So a lot of times there will be dinners. People will go out to dinner or for brunch. Some festivals will have activities before the milonga. There might be something like a mixer before the official start of the milonga, or there might be a brunch before the afternoon milonga. Take advantage of that if you don't know many people. Those events are specifically created so that people can meet each other. And once you have your group of people that you know, you might not want to continue to go. I don't usually go because I need my time to get ready, and I typically like to stay late, so I don't want to get there too early. And in terms of brunch, a lot of times I'm still sleeping by the time the brunch starts. So I don't take advantage of those events as much. But for a lot of people who are new to the scene, and you want to meet other people, those little events are really great. And then, of course, dinners, if you get invited to a dinner by some people, that's a great way of connecting with new people and getting to know them. Now, in terms of actually then getting access to as many dancers as you want. Like, so let's say there's 300 people in the room, and of those, you have a particular percentage that you're really interested in dancing. You want to pay attention to when those people are in the room. So the earlier part of the night usually is populated by people who don't want to stay up very late. Typically, it will be more of the beginner, sort of beginner intermediate crowd. Maybe it will be some older dancers because a lot of older dancers, they don't stay out very late, they go to bed early. So it might be to your advantage to be there way at the beginning before the dance floor fills up. And there's a little bit more space, and it's not so crazy. There's not as much going on. And because there's less people, you have a more visibility right off the bat because there's not as many people to compete with. However, if you want to dance with more advanced dancers and you have your eye on some people who might be out of your league a little bit and you're sort of, gearing up the courage to ask them to dance, it's a good strategy to wait for the late part of the milonga, after midnight, maybe after 1. That period, if the milonga goes till, let's say, till 4 or 5 a.m., that period after midnight, between midnight and 3, it's kind of a special time during a milonga because a lot of people who are the early risers, maybe people who go to a lot of classes and they have to get up, or they're older and they just don't stay up very late, those people leave. And then the people who stay are at this point where they're kind of tired. There's this delirium that sets in. It's a little bit of a dream state where you're sort of like not so clear anymore. And you're just kind of going with the flow. And I've noticed that it's in that period that the more seasoned dancers are going to be open a lot of times to dancing with new people. So that was my strategy early on when not many people knew me. I remember a particular dancer that I was watching all night long, and I was trying to capoeira him, and he was just in such high demand because he's so great, and he's a great friend of mine. We've now been dancing for 8 years. We've been dancing at different events, and I remember waiting and waiting and waiting, and then finally, when it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, it was just kind of sparse, and he had already danced with everyone that he knew, and there was just this somewhat of an opening, energetic opening for someone new to come in, and that's when I got my dance. And so that actually has been a great strategy for me in many cases, even in Buenos Aires, to wait until it's later when the crowd kind of thins out, and then it's just like everybody's boundaries are a little bit more relaxed, and there's this feeling of like, okay, I already got my fill, so I'm okay with allowing something else to happen, even if it's not like the best of the best. So that can be a strategy you can try out, either going early if you're sort of wanting to attract someone in that group. If you yourself are more of an early riser, you don't like to stay up late. So for you, it's better to come early, early, at the very beginning. And in fact, sometimes I really like feeling the energy build up from the very start. It's a really nice experience to go in when it's just starting and people are just trickling in, and then you kind of watch the whole wave build up. And then if you are aiming to dance with some of the other dancers who are more like the late night owls, the dancers that arrive around 11, 11:30, maybe people who arrive after the performances, and you're really trying to get their attention, then stay late and try that out. And that might be a good strategy. And then finally, something on the side here that's very useful in general, even if you are not going to festivals and marathons. I would say think about joining some of the Facebook groups for these events or for different tango organizations. Because once again, that will give you a consistent connection to people, and you'll start to find out about different events and learn about different opportunities, and people will connect with you. And that's just a really great strategy in general. But specifically for tango marathons and festivals nowadays, it's pretty common to have an event page on Facebook as well as a group. And being part of those groups, like once you're in, then every year when the event is coming up, there's going to be activity in that group, and you'll get to find out about different things that are happening in connection with that event. And I have learned about many other events by joining specific tango event Facebook groups. So that's a really good strategy as well. So those are sort of my overarching general tips for how to approach a tango marathon. The most, I think, important part of it, as I said, is really being open, really not having any particular attachment to things being a certain way. And the only way you can really follow through without attachment is having trust. Tango is so much about trust, isn't it? We have to learn to trust ourselves. We have to trust our partners in terms of the actual dance. We have to trust our bodies. And when it comes to big events like festivals and marathons, it kind of pushes you to have to trust a little more. Trust that you have what it takes, that you're good enough as you are. You don't have to be any different. You can be yourself. You can be yourself. You can get what you want just by being yourself. So not having an attachment and then going in with this sort of feeling of trust and openness, I think you'll be surprised how good of a time you'll have. Anytime that I manage to do this for myself, I'm always both relieved, surprised, and delighted by how good of a time I have. And it has nothing, most of the time, has nothing to do with the level of dances that I get, you know? And that's actually a really huge insight for me, because for a long time I was on such a feverish journey of trying to get more and more higher level dancers to dance with me, and there was some sort of identity tied up for me with that achievement. And eventually now for me, and I've talked about this before and other people have shared the same thing with me, is that I really appreciate the afternoon milongas more. Those are the ones that I have the best time at. And it's because, I think, it's because I have very low expectations, but also other people too. And it's like everybody who goes in, it's like we're all just rolling out of bed. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We just woke up an hour ago. We're all kind of like having this tangover, which is my equivalent of a hangover. It's a tangover. You know, the feet are hurting. Everything's kind of like off a little bit. And you might not be wearing your most outrageous outfit. You're just kind of wearing a step above your pajamas. And people are eating, people are hanging out, and there's just this kind of like relaxed nature about it. And those are the times that I have the absolute best dancing experiences. And they might happen with complete beginners that, you know, I've never danced with. And it's always surprising to me how good it turns out, because I think to myself, wow, none of the things that I typically want to experience I feel are available. But because I go in without expectations, I think it just allows for new things to happen. And the last time I actually felt this. I mean, I always feel this at the afternoon milongas, but I have this feeling whenever it happens. I'm at the afternoon milonga, and I usually like hit some sort of a super highway. I'm like having a really great time, not just attracting good dances, but also kind of me dancing really well. Like I kind of find this place in myself where I really access the dance space that I want to feel. And whenever I experience it, I think to myself, oh my gosh, this is so easy. This is so easy. This is what it's like. And my friend and I, we actually have talked about this feeling that it feels like when you're in that state, that is the waking state. That's when I'm most awake. It's like I'm woken up into reality out of a dream. And then after that experience, it feels like I fall back asleep. And so I have this feeling, and it feels so easy. And it feels like, oh my God, how did I ever have any other experience? That from now on, all I need to do is this. This is so available. I don't have to work very hard for this. But then I'll go that night. All right. And this happened a lot. Like, so let's say it's Sunday. Sundays is usually my day of the afternoon. That's my best time. Sunday afternoon milonga. Sunday night, because I had such a great time during the afternoon, I have this expectation. I have this feeling like, wow, I had such a great time during the afternoon. Let me just continue. I'm just going to go in. I'm just going to pick up right where I left off. Nope. The complete opposite. I can't, night and day. It's like something has been cut off and I cannot access it. I can't feel that ease. And again, I'm looking around myself and going, everybody's having so much fun. The music is great. The venue's great. The lighting, what is going on? What's wrong with me? But I think it's just that idea of attachment, because when you have a really, really great time, then you think, okay, now it's always going to be like this. Now it's easy, but it's not. Every milonga is very different. Every milonga, at a festival especially, every milonga is its own little world, its own little lifetime, this little micro lifetime where you go in and you live out this history, this arc with other people for a few hours, and then it's done. And we close the page, we close the book on that, and it's over, and it will never, ever happen again. It'll never happen. The next milonga, you have to go in again with that complete openness. You cannot be attached to what happened before or what happened last night. If you had a really amazing time with a person dancing to a tanda the night before, it is very possible you will not enjoy that same person again that next night. It's kind of maddening, drives you crazy why that is so, but that's tango. And that's life, right? Because the big insight about life, anytime you try to fix something and make it solid, it slips through your fingers, right? That's life. And that's how tango is. And marathons are these opportunities to dive into that deeper level and experience it on a deeper level with more people over a long period of time. So those are some of my suggestions for you to chew on and try out. I'm curious how this lands with you, and if you have other suggestions or questions, maybe you have some of your own strategies that have been very helpful for you to get the dances that you want. And I invite you to message me on social media or on my email, social media at I'm So Tango, or email me at connect@imsotango.com. And also, if you haven't done so already, please consider this a formal invitation to join my private Facebook group, where we get to have these conversations on an ongoing basis, and I can share with you more tips and stories about my own tango journey, but then there's all these other people who are sharing their experiences as well. So My Facebook group is growing and it's really becoming a beautiful uh, little safe space, little hub for social tango dancers to banter and get things off their chest and get some ideas and feedback. So I would love for you to be a part of it. The link for the Facebook group is also listed below in the show notes. All right, I will go ahead and call that a day. And I look forward to bantering, continuing our banter next week at the next Tango Banter. Have a wonderful rest of your week. And ciao.